Our speaker today is Stephanie Ortiz, who is a Prevention and Public Awareness Coordinator at End Domestic Abuse Wisconsin, who will talk with us today on this topic. She will present the conditions that give rise to harmful power dynamics existing in work and home life, and will also address how to prevent these dynamics from showing up in our own spaces. Stephanie is passionate about programs helping people understand the importance of engaging young people and addressing the root causes and working to an end to oppose sexual harassment and a sexual assault in all of its forms. Stephanie, we look forward to your presentation, and we have made a contribution in your name to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund as a way of saying thanks for speaking to us today. As we welcome her to the podium, I want to remind you, if time permits for questions, please wait for one of the audience microphones because our program is being recorded. Welcome, Stephanie.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I would just want to thank Roberta and Jane for putting all the nuts and bolts together to get me here. Thank you all. Can we give them a round of a hand real quick? So when our executive director, Patty Seeger, reached out to me about this presentation, I really had to think on what message I would want to send to you all in the 20 minutes I have. So y'all are going to have to bear with me. And my really hope from this presentation is that you all get a little bit uncomfortable. When there's a sign of discomfort, that's really our grown zone, but I like to think of it as our growth zone. So you all will be learning. If you're feeling that sense of discomfort, that's a good thing, okay? So y'all will bear with me, okay? Awesome. All right. So good afternoon. Again, thanks for having me. My name is Stephanie Ortiz. I've been in my role as a Prevention and Public Awareness Coordinator at End Abuse, which is our state coalition against domestic violence here in Madison. I've been there for about a year and a half now. We go by End Abuse for short. So I've been saying that because we have done a name change recently, and people call us all sorts of things, Tony. So End Abuse is our name for short, but it is our statewide coalition. Before my time at End Abuse and following college, I worked for 4 years as a rape prevention education specialist at Wise Women Gathering Place, which is in Green Bay, where I live. So I traveled up here from there. I coordinated and facilitated prevention programming for Native youth from the community that I grew up in. And now my work at the statewide level really includes managing the statewide domestic violence prevention initiative, which I'll touch on a little bit at the end of my presentation as a way for you all to get involved. But in short, the statewide domestic violence prevention initiative really has 3 big components. The first is a grant program. So we fund organizations throughout Wisconsin, 28 of them, to engage youth in ending violence in their communities. The second is an annual teen summit. That just happened this weekend, so I'm a little tired because it was like 16-hour days for the past 3 days. But that Teen Summit happens every year now, thanks to the funding from the Department of Children and Families. So the second goal is that Teen Summit, where young people and our grantees come together in Wisconsin Dells, and it's all a big conference led by youth for youth. Again, I'll plug that at the end. The third goal and the third component of the statewide domestic violence initiative is a statewide media and social marketing campaign to promote healthy relationships. So that is called Dare to Know, and more will be to come for that in the next couple months. We've been working on that. So that's the campaign and the initiative that I'm part of in my role at End Abuse. And so our mission at End Abuse is to promote social change that transforms societal attitudes, practices, and policies to prevent and eliminate domestic violence, abuse, and oppression. So again, thanks for having me, everyone. And I'm just going to jump right in. There should be a clicker right down here. Okay. So, as mentioned in the intro, since sexual misconduct allegations exploded against the infamous movie icon Harvey Weinstein in October of last year, dozens and dozens of other women have disclosed other high-profile men and accused them of similar allegations. What started as a hashtag aimed at giving victims a voice has turned into lawsuits filed against some of Hollywood's most powerful players. This has also included ethics investigations in the case of some accused elected officials. Me Too paved the way for Time's Up, a legal defense fund and anti-sexual harassment initiative backed by prominent women in the entertainment industry. The second annual Women's March on January 20th. How many of you all are familiar with Women's March? Raise your hands. All right, awesome. We just had our second anniversary event on January 20th. And this, again, brought out millions of women and people across the country, and countless survivors publicly continue to disclose harm done to them via those two hashtags, Me Too and Time's Up. So I've got a 5-minute video for us to watch. If you can cue that up for me.
We can't all be sluts. We can't all be asking for it.
I am here to give you permission to be angry.
This reality might not have to be our reality anymore.
I felt this crushing sense of powerlessness. This is the time to take my power back. Here's my story.
Uber promises into sexual harassment.
Fox News cutting its ties with Bill O'Reilly.
I felt it was my duty for the women who are silent to be brave.
Who have worked at the plaza saying
it's okay to stand up for yourself.
Taylor Swift appearing in court today.
On Harvey Weinstein, the New York
People forget a lot that there's a human behind this, someone who was very hurt and wrong.
James Spacey now under criminal investigation.
We just learned this moments ago.
has been fired.
I always thought maybe things could change for my daughter. I never thought things could change for me.
Honestly, I was furious. I had had a man grope me in front of multiple colleagues, and I was tired of wondering if it was something I wore. I was tired of wondering if it was a vibe I was giving off. And when I talked to other women, they were furious too.
I felt that if I can speak out, maybe if I just stand up, then someone else will stand up with me.
There wasn't a place for us to report these experiences, but I sure did talk about it a lot over the years.
The least I could do was actually tell my own story and validate theirs for them in a way, just as I was hoping someone much bigger than me would help validate my story.
And I knew that other women would continue to apply for jobs there, and that made me feel really uncomfortable.
I was afraid of the retaliation. I know the power of patriarchy. I know what men can do when they're angry.
They did everything that they could to prevent me from raising my concerns further.
They asked me if there were other girls, maybe that he has done this too, and can I go get them? I had to show them that I wasn't lying. It's like they took me for a joke.
And if they couldn't stop us from talking, well, they were going to stop everybody from listening to us.
People digging into my Instagram and, pulling up, sexy photos as if that kind of discredited me.
Well, I've seen you in committee. You're really tough. Why didn't you just hit him? Why did you let it go on for so long?
I was a smart young woman that had gone to college, that knew how to fight, and I still was manipulated and conned.
I felt ashamed that I hadn't spoken out sooner, not having the strength earlier on to make it stop.
The feeling of being humiliated as a woman, and at a certain point you think, is it my fault?
For so long, I went around harboring this ridiculous belief that because I was a non-white woman in my 20s, that somehow it was expected that I would have to be treated this way.
We don't have to just live like this. I always thought maybe things could change for my daughter. I never thought things could change for me.
I am here to give you permission to be angry. People are afraid, especially women. We're conditioned since birth to be polite.
To be nice. To be kind. To be liked. To not make waves. Bullshit.
We can't all be crazy. We can't all be sluts. We can't all be asking for it.
And I'm telling you, all the people who stand up, all the people who speak out, you are teaching people how to treat you. And you should not be shamed for that.
The shame is not ours to hold. The shame is on the perpetrator. Me Too can be a conversation starter, or it can be the whole conversation.
It took away the power from the predator and placed the power on the victim. And maybe, just maybe, we would be able to get a glimpse at the magnitude of this problem.
The amount of People sharing their stories with me is so intense.
People that were complete strangers reached out to tell very personal stories.
It's what they did with this hashtag, and they did a lot, and not only in France, in Hong Kong, in Japanese. It's an international movement.
I feel like the day that I spoke up and I said, you are a sexual harasser, I changed.
Al saber que fui valiente en hablar y decir lo que estaba pasando, a pesar de todo el temor que tenía y el miedo.
It's an honor to be the person who can say, like, hey, I spoke up about this. I took on the risk.
And I was very humbled and I was very proud. I'm very glad now that the story has been heard.
It's a direct response to that arrogance and that show of power and that bullying that says, we won't be silenced.
And so, as I mentioned before, this movement, this hashtag of Me Too has now joined forces with this movement around Time's Up. And in 1 month, a GoFundMe account has raised $20 million. These proceeds are helping women from across the world of work to report harm done to them. Harassment too often persists because perpetrators or those who harm and employers never face any consequences. And this is often the case when survivors, particularly those working in low-wage industries, don't have the resources to fight back. And so this is how we begin to prevent harmful power dynamics in our work and home life, by turning these moments into movements, because now, unlike ever before, our access to the media and to important decision makers has the potential of leading to real accountability and consequences. Yeah? We want all survivors everywhere to be heard, to be believed, and to know that accountability is possible. So I put the GoFundMe up there. It's something that many organizations and clubs have been supporting. And so, let me see, I got this again. So, how does this show up in our home and work life? I could highlight a ton of different things, but in my time, I'm going to talk a little bit about consent. Who has heard of the word consent? All right, that's a good thing. So the definition of consent is words or overt actions by a person who is legally or functionally competent to give informed approval, indicating a freely given agreement to have sexual intercourse or sexual contact. That definition is from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. But I like definitions, but I like concepts better. So that is how come I titled this presentation about power dynamics, because consent is about power. And so this next visual here talks a little bit about what consent is. So it's active. Consent is active. Just because a partner didn't say no doesn't mean they have given consent. So only yes means yes. The second one is based on equal power. If someone is underage, they're under the influence, they're asleep, they cannot consent. Choice. We make sure our partners feel free to say yes or no without pressure. If we aren't willing to take no for an answer, consent cannot happen. And process. Consent requires ongoing conversations with lots of trust. Just because someone says yes to making out doesn't mean that they want to do anything else. You can change your mind at any time. So I like to talk about the power dynamics and the additional layers that come along with consent, because it's much more complex than only no means no kind of thing. We've been switching that to saying, okay, did you get a yes? So my next piece is talking, again, exploring this concept of consent a little deeper. And so I tend to I'm big on trying to shift language, right? And so a lot of times you'll hear perpetrator and victim. How many have heard like the one or the other? You're either one or the other, perpetrator or victim, okay? I like to try to shift that to saying those who have harmed and those who have been harmed. That opens up the conversation a little bit to say, hey, how am I participating in this a little bit? in my life because oftentimes, like I said, it's much more complex than what we kind of see it to be. And so some examples of that is everyday interactions. And so some everyday interactions, I got a little comic for you all to explore this a little bit more, to see how it may show up in our home life, and also explore this concept of consent. And so how this comic goes is, in the first one here, we say, "You want to watch Pulp Fiction?" And the friend says, "Sure." Half an hour later, "Hey, I'm not really liking this. Let's do something else." "No, you said you'd watch the whole movie, so you're staying until it's done." You all noticing the connection with consent there? It's not talking specifically about the context of sex, but saying consent. Okay, I agreed to go watch the movie. All right, now I want to change my mind. You get to change your mind, even if you said yes. All right? So the next comic. "Thanks for letting me borrow your car." "No problem." Then next week, "What are you doing?" "Borrowing your car. You said I could." "How? You can't take my car whenever you want it. That's BS. You said I could have it once, so I should be able to have it all the time." All right? So again, these are concepts to continue to explore about how they may show up in our home life. This next one. "I brought back the cards. Now I can teach you poker." "Cool." A short time later, "Now that I know the rules, I don't like this game anymore. I don't think it's for me." "You can't invite me over to play cards and then now want to play cards. I went all this trouble for you and now for you, so you owe me and we're playing." All right? That is not consent. Last scenario here. "Hey, you come here, take this." "Soon, but I don't want to carry this stuff. Stop it." "Well, you dress like a weightlifter and you're showing off your muscles. You're asking to be handed heavy stuff. Don't blame me." All right, we're getting it? Okay. And another scenario, I think we want to talk, like I'm trying to get folks to shift the conversation about consent outside of the context of sex. And so I was just at Wisconsin Dells. I was taking my son, my 4-year-old, up to the top of the big slides. He was so excited. He was ready to go in. "I want to go to the biggest slide." "All right, let's get you a life jacket on." Get to the top of the slide. He changes his mind. I walked him back down. I did not make him go down the slide. He wasn't ready for it. He did not freely give consent. I didn't throw him down the slide. Okay? So this is just another example. Power dynamics. Thinking about that. We're bringing it home here. And so, just trying to really connect how we see these power dynamics show up in our own lives is really the point of this piece. And also seeing consent outside of the context of sex. Of course, it plays a huge role in, obviously consensual sex. But I think teaching youth, that is my passion, trying to remove it, all right? So talking about going back to those power dynamics is really important. So work life. So on this piece, sexual harassment, again, is about power and control dynamics. Sex is only the vehicle for an assailant to exert and exercise power control over a victim. And so, while high-profile case like Weinstein start much-needed conversations in mainstream media, we can't forget about the just overwhelming amount of perpetrators or those who harm who will never get the same spotlight or endure this level of public shaming. And so we can't forget about the millions of victims who never feel safe enough to report harassment or rape, whether they fear losing their jobs, other forms of retaliation, or even deportation. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, about 50 people a day are sexually assaulted or raped while working. This may only be a fraction of the reality, since many of this behavior goes unreported. Workplace cultures create a normalized behavior, allowing sexism to flourish and sexual harassment to go unchecked. We need to change attitudes, but the heavy lifting should not just be on women alone. We need allies to speak out and take action. And so this next piece just is about 4 ways to change your workplace culture. And so the first is have a clear policy in place that addresses gender-based violence and sexual harassment and a survivor-centered protocol for enforcing it. So making sure you're hearing from survivors about how is this going to look in our own workplace. The second, ensure that your HR team has a level of autonomy to address those issues, especially with respect to personal safety and in situations where the owner or president is the perpetrator. Compile a list of resources that are available in the community, specific to your community, because again, in Green Bay, there's a whole lot of community-based programs there, but make them local. So local resources are really important. I did put the National Sexual Assault Hotline up there, but we have some state-specific ones as well. But I think local ones are even better because that allows for more sustainability and relationship building with folks in your community. And then the last one, create a culture of accountability and respect, and create norms. And so norms is an agreement or a list of ways you agree to be with one another when you're in your workplace. And I even extend this going back to your home life. Ask your family members, what are some places you feel safe and you can be yourself? And hopefully they say home, but oftentimes they may say like with my friends or things like that. It's good to have those conversations in your home about what are places that you feel comfortable and you can be yourself, and then extending that conversation beyond that. Okay, how can we make our home life in your bedroom and, the living area a place where you feel like you can be yourself? How can we make the dinner table a place where you can feel like yourself and feel comfortable and talking and being open? And again, like I said, at your work, you all could have your employers come to the table and say, hey, this is the way we agree to be with one another when we're at work, and talk about those. Because I think that if you have agreements in place, you're less likely to violate them, right? Or when you see it happen, you could say, hey, when I noticed you say this, when I heard you say this, I felt like you weren't really respecting the norms that we agreed to when we're together in the workplace, and I request that you stop. Like, don't do it again. Be assertive. I think it's really important. So that is just a couple of 4 ways you can change your workplace culture by creating those norms and having a collective conversation with all of the folks that you're working with. And what can individuals do? Share your knowledge. Share this video that I just showed. Google is like my best friend sometimes, I swear. But any information and resources that you all pick up, make sure that you're sharing those with the people that are around you. You could watch a documentary about toxic masculinity. One that I recommend is The Mask You Live In with a Male Identifying Friend. Or maybe you could watch this video as like a workplace, in that process of creating your norms. This might be a video you all watch together. And books. I love books, but I believe in reading books as a community. And so reading a book by yourself is great. Reading a book in community and with a large group of people to reflect and process it is even better. So the Bell Hooks book that I recommend is Feminism is for Everybody, because it surely is. And the last piece before I just talk a little bit about the statewide domestic violence initiative is this piece around consent again. When I first started getting into this work, my intimate relationships changed. I started to call out my partner when he would repeatedly ask me to have sex. I would say, no, I'm not, like, now's not a good time. And he looked at me like, whoa. But he remembered all of the resources and information that I was giving him about, like, whoa, I don't get to ask more than once. I don't get to talk you into like being in the mood. That is really, really important stuff that we all need to share back in our homes. And even if I say yes and I change my mind later, you have to respect that. Those power dynamics are so important. And so it's just been interesting because, like I said, my intimate relationships, as I share the resources and information with them, they're like, oh, okay, like, whoa. Like, I don't want to be seen as someone who's, even in an intimate relationship, rape can happen, right? And so it's really important to understand that consent is about power, okay? And so going back to the beginning, the statewide domestic violence prevention initiative as a way to get involved, you can go to our website, endabusewisconsin.org. We are actually creating a new website for the campaign, the Dare to Know campaign, so that is to come. But in the meantime, End Abuse Wisconsin, on our website, we have a ton of resources on there. And so please feel free to go, browse our website and find out some of our partners, some of our member programs that are in this community that are really doing the hard work of preventing violence before it's ever thought of, before it ever happens. We also have the NCAL, which is the National Clearinghouse on Abuse in Later Life, as a project of ours. We also have the Rise Law Center, who does some really important work protecting immigrant families, refugee families, and things like that from harm and abuse and things. And so I know it's 1 o'clock. I just breezed through a whole bunch of information. I want to make space for some questions. The statewide initiative is definitely something I want to make sure you all get. So as the campaign rolls out and we get closer to launching it, I'll be in contact with Roberta and Jane. And I'll make sure you all get the information about all of that, okay? Yeah? All right, so questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for your, for your great work. I'm over here, Lori Dupree Brown. Right here. Hi.
Oh, Lori.
Yeah, nice to see you. My question is, you've given examples of women finding the words to challenge their environments. It's really empowering. We are a room full of a lot of men with power, and a lot of them probably don't have words when they need to speak out about something that's happening. I've had colleagues who I admire and respect deeply who've been like, I don't know what to say, and I see what's happening. Do you have any advice for men with power and giving them some of those baby step words that they can start saying so that we can change the culture?
Thanks for your question, Lori. I am a firm believer in nonviolent communication. And so how nonviolent communication goes is you state the fact of what you heard, very objective level. And then you say, this is how it made me feel. But this is something that you do before you say it out loud. This is something you're going to have to think of, because oftentimes we get into the situation, it's like, oh my God, I don't know what to say. And then you freeze and you don't say anything. So nonviolent communication scripts are a really important way to take a step out, go think about what you have to say and come back and then say it. So the first level is stating what happened. When I saw this, it made me feel a certain way, whatever feelings came to mind for you. And then under every feeling is a need that's either being met or not being met. So it's, when I see this, I feel this way. I need to know, or I need to have maybe safety in the workplace or comfort in the home or those types of things, cooperation and things like that. And then ending with a request. So stepping outside of the situation, giving yourself a moment to think about it, and going through that nonviolent communication script as a way to address it assertively is really important. So again, when I see this, I feel this, I need this, and I request something to change, or I request us to have a further conversation, or I request that we set norms for our house so that this can't happen again, or I request that we set norms in our workplace so these types of things don't happen again. Is that helpful? Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank you for the shout outs. Yes. So since the Harvey Weinstein unfolding of facts and then seeing this unfold in so many industries, it's been really painful, I think, for all of us to see this crisis of what's gone on in women's gymnastics. And I wondered if you could speak to what happens when girls or women who are in a less powerful position aren't believed by their parents or their coaches or the leaders they go to. And you see a major institution like Michigan State University, following what we saw at Penn State, have trouble grappling with it and not accept it. What can be done to help have people believe what are actually the facts?
Good question. I always recommend people plugging in to community groups, community organizations that are doing this type of work. Because in my experience, every time I hear someone telling me it was about what I wore or what a person wore or what they said or what they drank or something that the survivor did, there's like 10 other people that are like starting by believing. So if you go to those community-based organizations, you build those networks of people that have that understanding of, no, I'm not going to be victim blaming when situations come up like this, that are like literally, it is a philosophy with people that work in this movement is to start by believing. So when they hear of a disclosure or somebody comes to them, I don't ask questions about, well, what else happened that night? Or what were you wearing? All those victim blaming statements that we often hear from society. So I really would encourage people that are coming or that are disclosing to plug in with a network of people that are doing work like this, so that it can counter all of the negative things that they may be hearing, like I don't believe you, or like all of those other things that I just mentioned. So it's really important to connect and build that partnership with organizations in your local community that are doing work like that. I hope that helps. Yeah? Yeah, you're welcome. Others, I know it's we got about 5 more minutes or so.
Okay, hi. I was with a man at lunch the other day. He's a perfect gentleman. He said he was concerned about giving a compliment to one of our female colleagues because he thought that with all of the stuff going on, that he shouldn't be complimenting women on looking nice. And so I said, you know her really well. I don't think that she would interpret it that way, but I felt for him because he genuinely wanted to give her a compliment, but he was afraid to do so. So is it okay for men to compliment women in the workplace on how they look?
I wouldn't suggest it. I wouldn't suggest it. I think that society puts just like society tells us that is the way that we have to compliment each other all the time is by based off physical appearance or what somebody's wearing. And we really need a shift on talking about the personality of a person or, hey, when you really rocked that presentation last week, you did a really good job. So like encouraging people to compliment on like the way people are being in the work is way more important than what I wore today. Or how I look today. I don't, even like my son, like I try to encourage him to, if he is going to compliment on appearance, make it be like the second thing and sandwich it between 2 other things. Like, oh, when you rocked that presentation last week, you really did a good job. And, oh, I noticed your hair is different. I like it. And like, let me know how I can help you next week with your next thing going on. You know what I mean? So like, try not to make your compliment be all about physical appearance. I think that it's just not a healthy thing. So I think that that's one thing we need to start practicing on is making compliments about how people are being, how people are doing, personality, things like that, rather than physical appearance so much.
I have a granddaughter that's in the 4th grade. What can I start to do to start to educate her about this subject?
4th grade? So not shoving them down the slide. Yeah, I think it really starts with communication. It starts with respecting and setting boundaries at an earlier age. My son is 4 years old, and there are still concepts that I can start working with him on, even at that age. So I feel like I'm trying to think, what nieces do I have and nephews at the 4th grade? I'm trying to think, gosh, what grade does that make them? 4th. You said 4th, not 4. 10 years old, 9 years old. At 10 years old, I start getting young people engaged in youth groups already. Like, that's a really good time to start talking about ways to communicate, the nonviolent communication that I mentioned earlier. That's a skill set that I try to teach really earlier on. In the work that we do with the statewide initiative, we're engaging young people from 10 to 25 years old. And we're really talking about building leadership and skills. We're talking about promoting healthy relationships and what that looks like. What does an unhealthy relationship look like? Not just intimate ones, but like relationships with your peers and friends and things like that. Those types of things. Mm-hmm. One last question, it looks like.
Hi, Stephanie. I'm Martha Vukelik Austin. I just want to thank you for your presentation, and I also want to thank everybody that's here receiving it. This has been such a disturbing time for women and men, and even if a woman hasn't been sexually assaulted, I think every woman in this room would say there was some time when a comment was made or a look was given that really wasn't necessary and really made you feel uncomfortable. I'm the proud mother of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. And it was really trying to raise my sons and my daughters to be respectful of everybody, and listening to how other parents would talk, and, oh, well, they're going to get married when they're older and they're, 3 years old. Or try to give kids time to have healthy relationships, whether it's, boys together, girls and boys together, and also try to not focus as a parent or a grandparent on looks, or, oh, you look so cute today. Oh, look at that baby. Oh, he's so strong. Try not to make those gender distinctions is really important. And it's hard because in this society where you go in and buy baby clothes, it's pink and it's blue.
Absolutely.
So thank you for all your wonderful comments. And I think you enlightened us all today.
Thank you, Martha. I appreciate it. I didn't even need my water.
Oh, yeah, I'll get you your water. Yeah. Stephanie, thank you for your timely and very important presentation. And I also love the cartoons. They were great. Very thought-provoking. We are adjourned.